a netting that makes Mesotunnels breathable, and the temperature inside the Mesotunnels is not that different from the outside in comparison with low tunnels. Because of the material, we also can spray through them. So that is something pretty practical of Mesotunnels. Mesotunnels are physical, they work like physical barriers. So they protect the plants against different crops. This project is an organic project. We have squash here, muskmelon. And because it's a physical barrier, it protects the crops against pests such as cucumber beetles and squash bugs. Cucumber beetles are an important pest for muskmelon because can transmit a disease called bacterial wilt. And the squash bug is also an important disease on squash because it can transmit a bacterial disease as well. So that's why we install the Mesotunnels. A challenging with Mesotunnels is that cucurbits needs pollinators to produce fruit, right? So here we are testing different treatments. We have full season Mesotunnels. These Mesotunnels are 150 feet long. And for a treatment called full season Mesotunnels, we install a bumblebee hive in the center of the Mesotunnels. Then we have another treatment called on-off-on, in which we completely remove the nets to allow the pollinators to visit the flowers. And then we had another treatment called open ends, which we only open the ends. That means we took this net and hold it here, tie it there, and we let the pollinators to visit the flowers. So right now we closed them last Friday, and that is part of a research. We want to compare the yield at the end, and that is our pollinator trial. Then we have as well a mulch trial over there. This one is muskmelon, but we have a squash mulch trial over there at the end of this one. And on this one, we are testing different treatments to control weeds. We have landscape fabric, which is the same as this one that you can observe here. We have teff, which is an Asian grain that we tested last year, and we observed that it can outcompete weeds, but also it reduces squash yield. So this year we are testing, we mowed it and see what is the impact on yield. And then our other treatments are bare ground. We also mow it, and then we have one without mowed. So the one without mowed means doing nothing, and then the mowed ones is just going in and mowed. Something important about our mulch trial, at least on squash, we completely remove the nets at bloom to perform the mowing. And then we let the pollinators go in, and then after 2 weeks we close it again. And that would be it. I would be happy to answer your questions.
Do you have any data yet?
I have data from last year. Yeah, I had the same treatments on the pollination, and the mulch trial is a little bit different. But about last year data on this treatment, on this trial, I observed that the on-off-on was the best treatment. Yeah, followed by open ends, and full season Mesotunnel was the one that gave me less yield. But last year I didn't have a lot of pest pressure, and this year I saw a little bit more of a squash bugs. So that may change the results this year. Someone else?
How did they hold up to the derecho and other high wind scenarios?
Okay, so the question is how do they perform on the derecho and other weather scenarios? So last year the squash was not quite ready for harvesting, and after the derecho we came here, some of the nettings were completely ripped, but the plants were the plants were all laying down, but still we could harvest. We just like had to do it a little bit early, but we had for harvesting. So I cannot say if that protect them, but we could harvest. Yeah. Someone else?
Over here. Who's the manufacturer and what's the cost per roll of this ton of material?
So the question is, what is the cost and who is the manufacturer?
Yes.
And maybe Jose can help me with that question.
So to my knowledge, there's two companies that make these. These are made by Dubois, and I think the cost of these rolls are around $1,300. And there's another. These are called ProtectNet, and there's another brand that it's called SclutNet that it's a little cheaper, and both are manufactured in Canada, I think so. And also, if you have any other questions about the details, you can contact us. Our information is in the flyer about this project.
So, Carl, the cost, what Jose mentioned, that it varies $800 to maybe $1,300. That's for a roll which is 25 feet wide and 300 feet long. So 25 feet by 300 feet. So you pay roughly that. So definitely way more expensive than a row cover, but hopefully you can reuse it. And the other advantages are that you can see through it, you can even spray through it, and there is less heat buildup. Row cover you have to take off at the time of pollination and you can't put it back. But in this study, what we are trying to do, and Mark can add here, is that we can take it off, let the pollination happen, and we put it back. So even for organic growers, they don't have to spray. That's what the objective is.
Yeah, that is an important detail. For full season mesotunnel and open ends, we haven't sprayed anything yet. We sprayed just for on-off-on for cucumber beetles, and yeah, so basically we have not sprayed. Yes?
I have two questions. The first one, even though you can see through it, there's a lot in there. How do you scout for pest pressure? And the second one is, does the crowded conditions affect the yield?
Okay, so the questions were how do we scout and if the crowded conditions affect the yield. We scout on the outer alleys, so we go, we try to see through. It can be difficult, but we can catch some things going on. And about the yield, I don't think so, but I don't have anything to compare it with. So that is a good question.
Well, Sharon, you might just refer to some of your yield data from last year, and on the squash, I think the question was about the squash, how the full season did against the ones that were partially open.
Okay, about that, yeah, we observed differences on yield if we compare the treatments. Still, I mean, here we have, you can see all the different treatments. They look pretty similar, but for the ones that we took off and the treatment on, we had a highest yield in comparison with the ones that stay closed the whole season.
There's some suspicion that the bees have a hard time finding the flowers based on observations that Sharon and our other scouts have made, that it's just so dense in here. We have some question about the suitability of these winter squash for this kind of production system.
2 feet. Yes.
Do you see increased disease pressure with those being so dense in there?
The only disease that I have noticed last year and this year on a squash is powdery mildew. I cannot compare it with anything. I mean, with not having this system, because everything is under the system. But we don't have that much so far, and I just observed one leaf this week actually, and was not, the incidence and severity is low right now. Okay. Okay, thank you.